Hi, I'm Dr. Scott Watson, and this is a video on using MultiTracks in live worship. I have with me Luke Walters. Luke, tell us what your position is at this church and what you do in that position.
So I am the Director of Worship Arts here at Cedar Crest Bible Fellowship Church. And basically the main part of my job is creating with the pastors our worship service, working in different elements, whether that be prayers or songs, looking at the Word, what our church is going through, seeing what God is teaching us through that, and then giving people ways to express that and ways to learn from that through all different avenues.
Okay, and this video we're specifically going to talk about using MultiTracks. So can you tell us what MultiTracks are?
Yeah, so MultiTracks, boiled down, it's basically supplementing your band with pre-recorded tracks. So on a Sunday, we have in-ear monitors, we'll listen to a click that's playing, and as that click plays, different tracks will come in, either to add an instrument that we don't have that is really kind of crucial to the way that a song sounds, really captures the essence of it, or to supplement and add in something that we already have just to make it feel more full and really capture kind of the passion and energy of a song.
Okay, and we've talked before, you're using the DAW Ableton Live, but it could be any DAW, it could be Logic or something like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
But we'll be seeing how you use Live in our praise and worship with MultiTracks. One other thing too, you mentioned instruments that you don't have, like say the bass player is absent, or instruments that you just want to add, like some brass parts. And I know that in our MultiTracks, we also hear verbal cues, like the sound of a woman saying intro, two, ready, play. So where do those are also part of the MultiTracks? Yeah,
those are part of the MultiTracks as well. So, at the start of a song, so you know that you're coming in, you'll get usually 2 measures of intro is what's built into the ones that I use. So it'll give you a 1, 2, intro, 2, 3, 4, and then you're in. Or before you're coming into a bridge, it'll say bridge, and then you have a measure, or sometimes dynamic cues like, oh, you're going to build here, or breakdown, we're going to really pull everybody out. So that kind of helps to keep everybody on track.
I know. I at first it seemed kind of foreign, but I actually appreciate that when we don't have those things now. It's a lot more work for us as players. All right, so let's take a look at how MultiTracks are used in the DAW.
Okay, so I have Ableton Live pulled up here. Again, this is how we run through all of our tracks on a Sunday morning. I'm going to click the minus key to zoom out so you can see kind of the whole thing, what we're looking at. Each of these sections is one of the songs that we did. You can see the tracks are grouped. So this is the first song, Living Hope, and the next couple songs are in these different groupings.
Okay, so song 1, song 2, song 3 in this set.
Yeah, that's right. So I'll zoom in by clicking the plus key, and we'll just go to the very first song, which is Living Hope.
Great song.
Yep, great song, love it. Coming down from the top, we have this bar called markers. So that's basically just telling you where each section of the song starts. On a Sunday morning, I don't usually use that because we're not usually stopping mid-song and jumping back.
That's helpful for rehearsal.
Right, so if I know, we need to work on verse 3, I can come here to verse 3, put the playhead there, click it, and we'll be, it'll say verse 3. We got 4 counts to go in. The next one down is the tempo. So Ableton Live has a built-in metronome, which can be really helpful. It's a different tone than you get for a lot of the downloaded MultiTracks, and it kind of adds a little bit. You get the downbeat, so you get a higher note, can help orient the band to where they are. But you have to set the tempo specifically for each song.
Right.
So there's a clip here that will tell Ableton, okay, for Living Hope, we're going to set it to 72 beats per minute. If you don't have something like that, then it can, the Ableton metronome will not sync up, or if there's tempo changes, it won't follow them, and it can really cause some issues.
So each song is going to have its own tempo, and that can be set in the DAW.
Yep, and even there's some songs where there's tempo changes, that can also be set in the DAW.
All right, so we got the conductor track or tempo track.
So the next 2 tracks are the click track and the guide. The click track is just the metronome that comes when you download the track, and that can be helpful. We use that every week.
And you mentioned downloading the track.
Yeah.
So you acquire these MultiTracks as stems. Tell us what stems are and where you acquire them.
Yeah, so each individual stem is just a singly recorded part of the song. So in Living Hope, for example, if we open it up, you can see there's a stem for drums. So that's just the drum track. There's nothing else in that. There's no guitars, there's no vocals, it's just the drums. So I can come in here and, we have a drummer, so I'll take the drums out. And that way it's our drummer playing and not the one that's playing with Phil Wickham. And we download all these, or most of them, from a site called MultiTracks.com. So these are master recordings for all these songs. They don't have everything, but they have a lot. There's other ones, loopcommunity.com, and I think there's smaller ones out there too. You can also,
and we do hundreds of songs a year.
Yeah.
So, or dozens at least. So there must be that must be a big industry or whatever.
Yeah, and it can be expensive, but we started out real small. I just did one per month, I think, and we probably have built up 60 or 70 tracks that we now own over the years, and we'll just do 1 or 2 a month that we buy. And once you get your library going, you're not spending a ton of money because it's just, we're going to introduce this one song, so you buy it.
Okay, and this isn't really part of this video, but I know sometimes you actually create your own tracks, right?
Yeah, we have done that in the past. So you can, you don't have to purchase it. You can create your own. You could record your own, and from there, it's just getting it in the right place and then playing with it in time and routing it to your system, which sounds complicated, but once you understand it, it really is not.
No, so I just mentioned that because I think knowing how to use a DAW probably helps you use the pre-recorded multitracks.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. All right, so back to what you were sharing.
So we have the click track in the guide. That's coming from MultiTracks.com. For this one, we did get it off there. The click track is just the metronome. The guide I'll open up here, and you can see that at the start of each one of these sections, that we have a waveform. That's the woman saying chorus.
Could we hear some of these? Can you solo just some of the? You mentioned the click track. Can we just hear what the click track sounds like briefly?
Here's the click track.
Okay, and then let's hear the woman who counts us in.
Yep. So
breakdown.
She's there at the beginning of the track. You get this.
1, 2, intro, 2, 3, 4.
Right, and we'd be hearing the click and that,
Right.
and maybe some pad that's happening in it.
Yeah, if there's something coming in before one of the rhythmic instruments comes in, that's usually there.
Before you tell us about these tracks, can we just hear maybe about 4 measures of the whole song?
Yeah, let's go to, I'm going to go to a bigger part at the end so you have all the instruments.
Right.
So this is the final chorus for Living Hope.
Right. So most of that would be covered by our live players.
Yeah.
But maybe a couple tracks are going to be
a lot of it
blended in.
A lot of it we take out. You'll see there's 10 or 15 or 20 tracks here. I like to use as few as I can while still capturing the essence of the song. They have 4 guitars here. I'll probably only use 2 of those at most. I'll cover some. Our other guitar player, Steven, usually covers some. And then some of these are just like ambient things that kind of help to fill in some of the cracks.
Yeah.
But
and just to be clear, we have at times used 3 guitars. You, Tim, and Steven.
Yeah.
All fine players.
Yeah.
All doing pretty much what you're used to hearing.
Right.
But even in addition to that, you might have something that you add to
it helps to fill in. It gives the sound man some freedom and flexibility. Usually they'll pull them back pretty far and they won't really feature those in the mix. The point is not to feature and to sound just exactly like the band. It's to help fill out the sound and to help people feel comfortable singing.
Right. So it's the sound person who actually sets the levels in the house.
Yeah, you have some flexibility beforehand, but they're always, we're always at the mercy of the sound people. They can always just pull it out. They can mute it. It's kind of up to them to make sure that it all blends together. The next line down gets a little bit deeper. This is all of our MIDI cues. So basically, it's the computer communicating with Ableton, really Ableton communicating with itself. So you see some of these here at the end. So I've named these different things. And basically, when we encounter one of these, it'll tell Ableton to perform some action. So if I play it here, you'll notice that the metronome is off. It highlights yellow when it's on. And if we play it, you see that it just turned on. So as Ableton encounters these, it tells it to do different actions. This one goes all the way to the end, clears all the settings that we have, so that turns off all the noise. This one turns on the metronome, and then we have different cues that will tell Ableton to loop. So, if we start here, it'll play, and then hit one of those, and then just go right back. And just keep going and going until we're ready to move on.
Right, so MIDI are performance instructions that aren't audio.
Right.
Okay.
So then moving on, we also have pads. So for some songs that we don't use MultiTracks for, backing tracks, I actually have pads in Ableton that'll run. It's basically the same thing. It's another stem, but it's something that I've created that we can put in there. I can tell it what notes to play, and then it just kind of sits in the background and again fills out the sound a little bit and adds some atmosphere.
Right, so that might be that pedal tone that we hear at the beginning of a song while you're speaking to the congregation or whatever before we all come in.
Exactly.
Perhaps it runs through the song but doesn't have to.
Yep, that's exactly right. And then you have our 3 different songs that we did here. So we listened to Living Hope a little bit already. You can see that this has a bunch of tracks. We would take out probably 75 to 90% of these because they're being covered by our band, or because we just don't need that.
Right.
If we don't need a sound, we won't put it in. If it doesn't help, then we don't keep it in just to have tracks. We want it to accomplish something in the mix, help the sound guys to fill out the sound. So that's Living Hope, and then we have Yet Not I, but Through Christ in Me, which is a great modern hymn. So this is actually from Loop Community, so it's a little bit different quality. They can be a little bit cheaper. This was actually just created by some other worship leader.
So like an open source thing.
Yeah, he made the track, and you can download them. They're a little bit cheaper. And you'll see this is one that we've taken out almost all the instruments. We didn't have any brass players, but the track just wasn't that great. It didn't really add anything, so we took it out. The woodwinds didn't really add anything. We had a piano player. A lot of these guitars, I played one of them, but they didn't add anything to the mix, and so we took them out. And then Christ Be Magnified.
And those brass and sax or woodwinds or things you mentioned, were they software instruments, or were they actually players that were recorded?
It sounds like they were software
Okay, 'cause
instruments.
sometimes those are really kind of phony sounding.
Yeah, that's kind of the feel that it gave. And then there's Christ Be Magnified. That's the other one that we did. I can jump up here on the scroll bar. That'll take us right to that point. Nothing special here. Again, you'll see most of the things were taken out. I almost never add the vocals in. They'll give you sometimes like a harmony track. I think I've done it once or twice, and it doesn't really help. Sometimes I'll have a choir, and I'll put it like in the background to kind of encourage the congregation if it's a newer song.
I imagine there's this concern about it sounding unnatural, that we see 5 players on the platform, but we're hearing 25 players. That's going to make a disconnect that might be distracting.
Right, and so that's why we take out a lot of these sounds, because we don't want people to think like, oh, where is that coming from? Or like, we almost didn't have a drummer this week. There was a thought in my mind, ooh, do I put it in the track? But that's really like worst case scenario if I feel like this set is going to fall apart and it's going to cause the people of God to suffer because something bad happened, so I'll throw it in the track. But it's worst case scenario. And then lastly here, this is something new that we've been doing. This is live tuning for our vocalists. So you need to have good, or ideally you'd have good vocalists for your worship team. Churches of different sizes will have different people who are really gifted at this or not so much gifted. So it's not, you're going for heart mainly. But we can just put on, it's called Waves Tune, if I can get it up here. So basically this is an external plugin that I've brought into Ableton. I'll open it up here. And so for each song, I can automate what key it's going to tune our vocals to. I can automate how much it's actually going to catch it and bring it in. Our singers are all really great, so this just kind of brings us all together. Everybody's sharp or flat, a little bit different. It really sounds great in the room, even without this, but on the live stream, it really accentuates all the different ways that you're sharp or flat. So this brings us all in and just helps clean up the sound a little bit. So that's pretty much everything that there is to see about our setup here. Maybe a resource for the students to check out would be Churchfront. It's a YouTube channel. That's pretty much where I learned a lot of this stuff. I've tweaked it to our setting, but they have some really good videos about how to set all this up and how to kind of get started with MultiTracks. But certainly applicable for our scenario, and I think it's really helped us to feel confident in our playing and kind of free us up on the stage to worry less about what we're playing and more about worshiping and being with the church and actually participating in that sense.
All right, Luke, you mentioned that you have all these tracks in your DAW and you're on stage singing and speaking to the congregation. You have a guitar in your hand often, or maybe you're even playing a keyboard. I've seen you do sometimes. You don't have hands to click off this. And by the way, this is on the floor, right? Your computer is on the floor. So how do you initiate these multi-tracks in worship?
So I do it using this pedal, which I'll show you. This is called a Looptimus pedal. This is from actually one of the companies that produces the click tracks, Loop Community. So they created this, and it has a couple different functions. The way that I use it is all of these buttons will send MIDI notes. So just like we talked about, if I jump here to the end of Living Hope, just like we talked about these MIDI tracks giving Ableton commands, I can also do that manually through this pedal. So these 4, I think, you can change them week to week, what they do, but these 4 all correspond to different songs. So at the beginning of the set, we want to be at Living Hope, so I click button 1, which I've mapped, and that takes
jumps.
us to Living Hope.
Right.
And then when we get to the end of that, one of these MIDI tracks tells it to cut everything off. That cuts off the vocal tuning. It stops all the clicks. But then eventually we'll want to get to the second song. So I click number 2, and that takes us to Yet Not I, but Through Christ in Me. These buttons up here, this turns the metronome on and off. So if you look up there, as I click it, it goes on and off. The green button is to play,
Intro. 2.
and then the
3.
red one stops it.
Makes sense. Green and red.
Yep.
Start and stop. Okay, so could you show us how we get what's on the DAW, what's on your computer, into the Dante, the digital sound system, and so that the mixer can mix it and all that?
Yep, absolutely. So you have to get all of this audio from the computer into your system and then out to your speakers. And a lot of the times we're using in-ear monitors, so we also have to get it from the computer up to the system back into
to
our
us.
ears. So it's the same process for each. We go digitally out of my computer, but you can also go analog. You could just use your headphone jack on your computer, split the click and everything that your band needs to hear out of channel 1, your left ear, and then send everything else out through the second channel. The limitation with that is that your sound person only has one channel to mix. So it's either you have all the tracks or you have none of them or just 50% of everything.
Right.
So there's that. You could go out of your headphone jack. There's also another piece of equipment made by Loop Community, the same company that makes the pedal. And it allows you to send basically 8 channels out of your computer. So we did that for a little bit, but we found that once we could do digitally, it's a lot smoother. It's cleaner up on stage. So to send these stems digitally, you have to use, or we use rather, a software called Dante Virtual Sound Card, which is really big in the sound world. So I can show you that now. So I have it right down here, Dante Virtual Sound Card. And so basically, I have a USB-C to
Right here.
all sorts of different port hub, and then I'm going.
Can we look at the hub?
Yeah, let me take it out from under here.
Oh, okay.
So if you want to show them that.
So this is just converting USB-C to
USB-A.
USB-A.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so
And
here.
that goes to this one.
And that goes to this one, so you have to convert USB-A to Ethernet then. That's what I found best. You can buy some that go directly from USB-C to Ethernet, but I haven't found that those have ever worked with my Macs.
Okay.
So I always go USB-C to USB-A to Ethernet.
Okay.
And so you plug those in, and then you have the ability to send audio over that network. In fact, Scott, would you plug that in for me?
Sure. So,
Little tag
so
on
again,
back.
this is Ethernet here. This is USB here. We plug it in. The hub underneath here.
Yeah. So I'll close Dante, just so you can see what it's like when it opens up.
Okay.
So now we have the ability to run through Dante Virtual Sound Card. We'll open it up, and it's already running because I have these settings set, so it pops right up. But we're connecting to the network that everything else up in our tech booth is on. And then we're sending and receiving 16 channels of audio. So with that piece of hardware that I was talking about, you can send 8 channels, but you can't receive any because it's just a box.
But Dante is.
But Dante, you
hundreds
can
of
you can
many,
do so much.
Yeah.
So you're sending audio now, but you have to get that audio to go to the right place. So there's another software from the same company called Dante Controller. So I'll open that up. So that takes a second to load. X out of that. So because the rest of our system isn't on, I don't know if it's going to show you the other things, but basically what would happen is everything that is running Dante Virtual Sound Card on that network is going to show up here and also here.
Right.
So this computer will show up, Luke's MacBook, right here and right here. And so I would open this up and say, okay, I'm transmitting from my Mac going to, and then I'd open up the receiver to the soundboard. Mm-hmm. And then I would say, okay, I'm transmitting going from channel 1 to channel 32. I go 1 in this column down to 32 and click it. And then in theory, everything, you start playing, and anything that's set to channel 1 out of Ableton should be going to the board.
So basically, this is the software where you assign a channel from Ableton, your DAW, to a channel to the board.
Yeah, that's correct. Nothing is happening in the house until you have sent it via Dante.
Well, Luke, thank you so much for spending time
Yeah.
sharing. This must have taken you a lot of time to learn everything, and we're using it really, I would say as somebody who's in the congregation sometimes, somebody who's in the praise and worship team sometimes, it's not distracting. It seems like you're using it really well, so I appreciate all the efforts you've taken to absorbing this into what we do here at Cedar Crest Bible Fellowship Church. I just wanted to ask you one final question. How has using MultiTracks changed the worship experience or changed your role as worship leader?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think one of the main things is alleviating pressure from the worship team. Generally, we're bringing in volunteers to this place who are able to practice for 1 or 2 hours, if that, sometimes during the week. These are not professional musicians. And so as a leader, I want to do everything that I can to make this as easy as possible. Not that you shouldn't put work into it. You know, I obviously have that expectation for the team, and our people really do. This doesn't make them lazy, I don't think. But I also understand, like, my brother plays on the team. He's got 2 little kids.
Right.
And so, you know, sometimes he's scrambling to rehearsal on a Saturday morning. He's like, I'll be there in 10, 15 minutes. And I have the ability then to say, that's okay, we'll get started without you. I'll put the drums in the track. And really, at the end of the day, it's about leading people. You're doing that through music, but really you're trying to love people, and you're trying to communicate something about our giant God to people, and that starts at your team. If you can't love the people on your team, if you can't be gracious with the people on your team, you can't expect that grace and love about our God, those qualities are going to transfer to the congregation, and that's what you're trying to convey to them, the character of God. And so I think that's one of the big things, is really helping the team, making it a little bit easier on your volunteers, you know, doing everything that you can to help them and get them to that point where they're equipped and able to serve really well, taking off some of the musical pressure of, okay, we don't need to worry about if this song is going to slow down or pick up the pace. Like, if we're on time, which there's a learning curve to that, but if you're on time and you have your music, like, you're going for it, you'll be just fine.
Well, you know, for decades, for centuries, really, musicians have worked with metronomes. There's nothing new about this. Is just a high-tech metronome in some cases. Exactly. And I know as a player, it actually saves time in rehearsal to have a click track, to have to be playing to that. At first, I kind of just ignored it. Now I rely on it. And when you don't have those tracks, it actually takes us more time in rehearsal to get, which is, you know, that's part of music making, ensemble music making, the chemistry and all that. But it actually does save us time.
From a congregational standpoint, I think it's helped people to engage with the music. Having, you know, oh, this is the way that I heard it during the week, or, oh, I love this song, I know this one, and it feels full. It feels like, you know, some people aren't great singers, and yet the Bible says, let everything that has breath praise the Lord. And so for people to feel like, okay, this feels full, I can add my voice to this, it actually helps the people of God to sing loudly, to sing clearly, to feature their voices. In congregational music and congregational worship, the feature is not, oh, the tracks, or, oh, the guitar, or the drums. You should always be able to hear the people. And so what we want to do is encourage the people's voices. And so using tracks, I think, makes it feel like, okay, yes, this has the energy of that song I love. I can sing this out passionately.
Thank you. Anything else you'd like to tell us about MultiTracks that I didn't ask you about in this video?
I can't think of anything off the top of my head. I guess the big thing as far as encouragement to the students is be patient with yourself, start out slow. It can be costly. I mean, Ableton Live is a couple $100 to get the full version, and then tracks, depending on where you get them, can be costly. But the goal is not to be Hillsong. The goal is not to be Bethel or any of these other churches. You should be your own church. You should use your own people. The goal is to help the people of God. And so start slow. Do, like, maybe if you're doing 4 songs a week, do 1 with a track just to start out. Or do it in rehearsal a bunch of times before you do it, so your team gets used to playing with this. And then, you know, we're at the point where, unless we're doing a hymn with piano and organ, most of our songs are using tracks, but it's taken us 5 years to get there. And so it's been a long haul, but you keep learning. I'm still learning even today. So you keep doing that. Be patient with yourself. Be patient with your team, and, you know, trust in the Lord, and He'll make it happen.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Luke.
Absolutely.
Jesus Christ, my name.